In the legal world, there is a combination of forces that feed a corrupt and suffocating legal system for attorneys. Law schools, law professionals, judges, and even the firms themselves for whom you work create a system, a matrix, if you will, that is nothing like what you thought when you passed the bar exam. The purpose of this podcast is to help you escape this legal matrix, leading you out of the proverbial desert to be free of the bondage of the matrix. Hosted by Bryce D. Nyer, attorney at law with over 30 years experience in the trenches of civil and criminal litigation at the state, federal, and international levels. He's a highly accomplished and resourceful legal professional, a true master of his craft, and he's here to help you get your life back. Here's your host, Bryce D. Nyer.
All right. It's another episode of Escape the Legal Matrix with yours truly, Bryce D. Nyer, coming at you live from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg, and in the house, of course, we always usually have Drake, our Labrador Retriever, who is sound asleep under the desk, having his paw on my foot to make sure I don't accidentally leave him here when I go home. So we're going to talk about tonight something that, I don't know, I was kind of thinking about today, about these things called life coaches. So tonight's episode is called The Vanishing, life coaches. So what is a life coach? Okay. I guess all of this, from what I understand, started really arising during, COVID, when people had nothing better to do and they were sent home from their jobs. People got laid off. And then all of a sudden, everybody became a life coach with Zoom and all this other stuff. And now, all of a sudden, years later, they're all gone. And I'll tell you why they're all gone, or at least most of them. This is the experience that I found. Some of the organizations that I had joined within the last 10 years, the leaders of these particular organizations, they had walked the talk and talked the walk. No doubt about it. They had lived what they were leading, and they were leading what they had actually lived. There was no pretension. They had the metrics to back it up, and the four main domains of body, of being, of balance, and business. And this select individuals that I came into contact with for roughly, I would say, at least a 7-year period, were just dynamic people. And they had proved themselves and their value, and they were not just full of fluff. They were real. Now, contrast that with what you were seeing on social media. Is all of a sudden all these people were coming out of the woodwork that said, life coach, coach this, coach that. And the reality was, they had no experience. They had no credentials. They had no battle wounds or scars or anything to back it up. And a lot of people, took the hook and bought into a lot of these programs when these people, these so-called life coaches themselves, they were all screwed up in their lives. And it was true. They could not even lead themselves, let alone lead others. They just didn't have the capital. They didn't have the energy. They didn't have the smarts. They didn't have the gravitas at all. And you see that a lot when people just have nothing else to do and all of a sudden think, hey, I can provide you with all this advice and if you listen to me, you'll make it big. And then you're like, okay, well, let's see what, you look like on the beach. Are you physically fit or not? And what's in your bank accounts? And what do your brokerage accounts look like? And what do you have to show for it? And it goes back to, what is the fruit that you have produced? And it took me a long time to really you know what? It's true. A lot of these people they have no substance to them, no foundation. You look in the legal profession, this legal matrix, and the reality is a lot of lawyers, their lives are all jacked up. They're all screwed up. They have mental health problems. They have addictions, substance abuse. And, a year or two ago, when I was quoting the American Bar Association at the time, that their annual report about the well-being of lawyers, it was just stunning from the surveys that they had conducted and their statistics in the legal profession, this amount of suicidal thoughts or the alcohol addictions or drug addictions and depression. And a lot of lawyers were trying to go out there and lead their clients, to whatever victory, however you want to define that in the legal profession for their clients. It may have been in criminal court or civil court. And I see this all the time. I see this fakery, especially among lawyers, that pretend they have it all together. And in reality, they don't. A lot of times the successful people, the really successful people, don't need to sit there and show it. They already are, they already know it. And the companies that they run or what their capital accounts or their investments or whatever you're going to use for the metrics and the four domains for these people, it already shows. They don't have to say anything. And you find a lot of these life coaches were being, to me at least, pretentious. I mean, as a lawyer, I'm not a life coach. I'm an attorney. I do litigation. I've done appellate work. And so people would come to me based on the experience that I have in litigation or certain areas of law. But I'm certainly not a life coach. I can give, legal advice. I can give Bryce advice, in certain areas based on experience. But I'm not a life coach. That's not what I am. And in families, truth be told, if you're going to have life coaches in families, that should be your parents, your mom and your dad. They should be, including me, setting the example for the children in the family. And a lot of times you see a lot of failures in families too, because the parents, one or both, fall into this pattern of sin or depression or addiction or whatever it is. And how can you lead your family when you can't even lead yourself? You become, in a sense, a hypocrite. And I found that now, especially with the advent of AI, a lot of these people that are doing the coaching thing, they're being replaced, being like physical fitness. You can basically get an AI program on anything with videos and instructions and food and nutrition programs and the exercises and develop your own workout program. The issue is, will you do it, or do you need a real human being to hold you accountable? So, I just noticed it. All of a sudden, there were no more life coaches. And I think that they were exposed for what they were, which was nothing. They had no substance, no foundation, to them. It's kind of like an army, a ghost army that really doesn't have the personnel, doesn't have the logistics or the courage to do what needs to be done in war and battle. And so you see that as well playing out in society, that people are speaking out both ends of their mouth, and they're just not who they say they are. And in the legal profession, you get fed this line of bravado in law school, and you're all pumped up and you're getting all this academic knowledge. And then once you get into the real world of opening, owning, operating, leading a law firm, if you're the leader, it's on you. And if you're not staying physically fit, if you're going out and you're getting drunk all the time and you're fighting with your spouse or one of your children or one of your other family members or even your law partners, and you're just in total chaos, there is no way you can function at 100%. And so when you sit there and your energy is being drained and zapped from all this chaos in your life, and then you go out and portray yourself that you are fit and proper to lead your clients, when inside you're dying. This cancer is spreading inside you and you're just dying. And then it adversely affects your abilities to open, own, operate, and lead your law firm and to properly represent your clients. So, I would suggest to everybody, go back on these social media platforms and kind of look at all these people that are giving advice. And quite frankly, a lot of them just don't know what they're talking about. Now, there are some people that are, again, experience counts. So if you've got somebody who's a surgeon and has done 4,000 surgeries in a particular area, they're probably going to have a unique perspective and experience and be able to, lead you to a proper cure or, a proper outcome for whatever your medical illness is. Or maybe it's somebody that's a computer expert that has been in the business, for 30 or 40 years and is up to date on everything that's going on and can clearly assess what the situation is in that particular field. Or in the real estate market, who are the agents that are actually closing? What's going on in the current market conditions? They're typically, based on experience, going to know, and they're qualified to give advice and to lead other agents to say, this is what is working right now. This may change in a year, but right now, this is what buyers want. This is what sellers want. And so I would submit to you that with all of the noise that is out there today, from the politicians, from all these people on social media, and everybody, just blowing up these platforms and like, listen to me, you have to sit there and ask the better question. Are they really qualified to give advice in the area that they're advising? And I'm going to give you a prime example. I see continuously on social media platforms non-lawyers giving legal advice. Now, maybe they've been in prison or maybe they've been through their own case, but they start citing, but they're citing things about what you should do. And then they charge a fee for you to talk to them, which to me essentially is practicing law without a license. And I would contend that they could be charged in some states with a misdemeanor. But I know that the information they're giving out is totally incorrect. How do I know? Because I've litigated for 34 years. I know the particular area they're talking about. And I know that what they're saying is absolutely incorrect. And they're basically bilking people out of small fees, and you get enough people to subscribe and it adds up. But they're not correct. They're leading people into a sense of false security. And I see that all the time. It's just in the legal field, in the legal matrix, everybody thinks they're a lawyer. Well, here's the deal. Anybody can read a statute. Anybody can read a book. Anybody can read a case opinion. But there's a lot more to being an active lawyer than just, okay, I had my own case, and that's the only thing I worked on for 10 or 15 years, while I was in prison. Well, yeah, you can get good at anything if you work consistently on it, but it doesn't mean you know all the other areas of law. It doesn't mean you know every rule or the judge's personalities or how to construct briefs or certain legal principles. They know a little about a lot or a lot about a little. And again, I will submit to you, when you sit there and you go on these social media platforms and all these people claim to know A, B, C, and D, you need to do your due diligence. Do they really know what they are talking about? And again, from what I've seen in the legal profession, a lot of people, they don't know. They just are incorrect, and they're taking advantage of people's fears. So again, I want you to, to look at this thing called the Vanishing, all these life coaches and all these advisors, so to speak, in certain fields. Be careful who and what you listen to. Do your homework, do your research, do your due diligence, and check them out. I do. Even when I hire other lawyers, I still check it out. And people should check out who I am and my firm and our credentials and everything. Everybody should. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with getting a second or third opinion. But again, all of a sudden, there were no more life coaches. So anyway, it's been another episode of Escape the Legal Matrix. It's great being here with you. Drake is still asleep, still has his paw on my foot. I guess I'm not going anywhere without him knowing about it. And look, I want you to have a great day, great night, whatever time zone you're in, and the rest of your week or weekend, depending upon, again, what country you're in, what time zone you're in. And keep tuning in every week for these episodes. I think you're going to find them to be quite interesting, and we're going to cover a lot of topics coming up in the future. We're going to start giving a lot more practical advice and real world advice. And again, take it with a grain of salt, listen to it, check it out, see if it helps you in your life for what you're doing. And just remember, the legal profession, it is a legal matrix. Don't be fooled. All right, this is Bryce and we are out of here.